Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sorting Myself Out. I am live here with Khemit Bailey. Khemit, welcome.
Hey, thanks very much for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, I think I'll just let you kind of tell us a little bit about why you reached out and what you're doing, and then we can get into a discussion.
Yeah, sure. So I actually run a Facebook group called the Self Authoring Collaboration Group. And it's kind of what it sounds like. It's a place where people who are working on self-authoring or interested in it or have questions about it can come together to discuss all those things. And we've been running that it's only been a few months, but we're up to about 500 members, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of people are working on it, and a lot of people want to collaborate around it. So yeah, I run that. A person who is in the group actually reached out with a video of yours, and they said, "Hey, if you check these guys out, they're doing some interesting things, also related to Jordan Peterson's work." And I was like, "That sounds amazing." So I reached out to you guys, and you were kind enough to invite me on for a podcast. So here we are.
Yeah, well, I just had a really good feeling about you. I looked at the Facebook page, I saw your video, and it just seems like you were doing some really authentic work, that something that you really care about. And that really struck me. It also seems like you know something, like you have something to offer. I saw your business, the character arc. I looked at your Facebook page, and it seemed like you had your own little niche that you were creating, and I really liked that.
Yeah, thanks, thank you. I like to think I know something. I'm not sure how much, but I also am just really I'm definitely very passionate about the self-authoring suite and what it's been doing for people.
Yeah.
I kind of work in like an adjacent field, as you saw with my stuff with the character arc. So for me, anything I can do to help people to get through the program, because that's the hardest part. It's just to get through it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
It's a brilliant idea because it's so much more powerful to do something as a group where there's that extra layer of accountability and sharing.
Totally. Without that, I mean, I feel like planning and commitment, and then actually having a group around it. Those are the ways that people actually get through it. Without those things, it just takes sheer willpower, which some people have, but not everybody does, and to different degrees. So it's really useful just to have a place where like everyone's in that same struggle together.
Yeah, and you could even post like, "Hey, I haven't worked on it in 2 weeks. I'm really struggling," and that becomes something new to talk about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we had Paul Vanderklay on about a week or so. I don't remember how long ago it was, but do you know Paul? Are you familiar?
I don't, but I know him from that video. I actually watched. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched a couple of chunks of it.
Yeah, and one of the things he talked about is that as human beings, we are kind of meant to grow and transform in a group community environment. It's very hard to transform on your own without this community of people that is supporting you and supporting one another through that process. And that kind of reminds me of what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's really true, and especially for people who tend to be more introverted. It can be a real problem because you want to go it all on your own, and you kind of just build up this image of yourself around being able, like the lone wolf, and being able to like handle everything that comes your way. And it's useful to be able to think that way because you become self-reliant, but sometimes it is really just like an easy hack to have other people to be able to talk to, especially when it's like difficult or that's hard for you.
So how did you find Jordan Peterson? Tell us your Jordan Peterson story.
Well, I had been kind of like adjacent to Jordan Peterson for a while as far as listening to ideas in that same space. So I was following Sam Harris,
nice,
and starting to figure out who the other people in IDW were, and that was really interesting to me. And then I had a friend who said, "Oh, you like Sam Harris? You're gonna love this guy," and he basically put me on to Jordan Peterson and sent me a couple of videos. I watched a few videos, but then I just read 12 Rules for Life. And after reading that, I was hooked. I mean, I'm sure many of your viewers will recognize that story, but I just thought the ideas there were so well and clearly articulated that I couldn't not try to find more from this guy. And so from there, I went on to read Maps of Meaning, which was really life-changing for me. Like that was like a life-changing book for me in many ways. And it ties into a lot of, what I'm working on at the character arc, which is trying to address something like that same problem that he talks about, the meaning crisis. I think of it as like a mythological crisis, and in Maps of Meaning, he talks about, the connection between story and our lives and exactly how deep that goes. So, I've ever since then found everything he does really fascinating. I think he's a force for good in the world, and really, that's the story.
Right on. Maps of Meaning is one of my favorite books of all time. It's right here. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, that thing is marked up. Just
yeah,
it's just so many. There's so many notes and little stickies in it, and that re-inspired my education. Because I had finished my undergraduate degree, and I was kind of done with school. I was like, screw that. But Jordan Peterson rekindled the philosopher inside of me, as well as the other parts of me, the seeker, the parts of me that want to grow and take responsibility for my life. But he definitely stimulated me intellectually in a way that I had not found academically in a few years. And he brought something new to the table that I wasn't hearing from other people. And that was really refreshing. Absolutely refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same story for me. When I read Maps of Meaning, it just opened up like a rabbit hole, really, and there's so much to explore in that world. And I'd kind of been around the fringes of a lot of these ideas for a long time, but the connection of it to religion for one, and to mythologies, and then just to the biology of our makeup, and how these ideas are more than just transient, ephemeral thought objects, that they're actually things that they make us up in a very real way. That was new to me. And all the people he cites and all the different sources he uses to build his arguments are sources that I have become really interested in myself as well. So he'd sent me down that same hole. I mean, it's also very rare to hear an academic speak so compellingly. Usually, I mean, I've been in school for a large part of my life, and very rarely did any of the teachers really captivate me the same way that he's able to. And I'm obviously not alone in that, but it really did the same for me, rekindling that desire to seek out knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking back to his biblical lectures, he was looking at it as sort of a performance, and he would perform his education. He'd perform his material in a way, like you said, it's captivating. And if you look back at his old lectures from the University of Toronto or whatever it's called, where he's teaching the Maps of Meaning course, or he's teaching the personality theory course, he's still doing that, like this is, and Maps of Meaning was written in 1999 or published in 99. And he is performing that over and over again. And it's just getting more and more precise, but I very little hear him say anything that can't be traced back to that Maps of Meaning philosophy. He'll branch out of it sometimes and get into new areas, but the foundation of his entire life's work is really standing on top of that Maps of Meaning.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it really kind of cracked the code with that book, so there wasn't really further on to expound. I mean, he can kind of make those arguments using updated data that he's found since then, which I think is what he does a lot of times in his lectures. But the kernel of of truth that he was mapping out in Maps of Meaning is really there in everything that he says. And so that's why, I mean, I'm like you, I've read that book and just go through it all the time to figure out exactly what it is in there that links to what it is he's saying now. And finding those connections is really interesting. I'm actually watching those the 1996 lectures from Harvard.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah, they're on YouTube. I mean, they're on his channel, and I'm about halfway through those. I did the 2017 Maps of Meaning lectures, but the 1996 ones are fascinating because I think he's like my age, and he's teaching these Harvard students about Maps of Meaning as he's writing it, because he basically has a manuscript at that point and not the whole book. Right. So it is kind of a different Jordan Peterson, but it's obviously the same person. Really, really cool stuff.
How old are you?
I'm 37.
Okay, wow. So I'm only 25, so it's crazy to think about how he was already 37 and 96. It's kind of a trip. It makes me feel better about myself. It's like, okay, I've got a little time to accomplish a few things in my life.
No, yeah, you got some time. Well, that's why you got to compare yourself to who you were yesterday as opposed to someone else.
There you go.
I look at his Maps of Meaning. He's lecturing on Maps of Meaning at around my age. And I'm like, whoa, figure all this out. I'm like, I'm reading it from you, so I feel like I'm behind the curve. So I had the opposite experience.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's such a good rule. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Yeah.
If you're joining us here and you're writing in the chat, I'm gonna check the chat and read it in a little bit, but just hang in there. So, Khemit, tell us about how to join this group, what the process is, stuff like that, because we have a link to the Facebook group in the description as well as some other information. So,
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. You just find us on Facebook, and like you said, the link should be included there. Um, there's 3 questions that I ask of everybody who's joining, just to kind of get a sense of who's in the group and like what their interest in future authoring is. Because like some people are joining because they just heard about it. They maybe watched their first Jordan Peterson video, and he talks about future authoring, and they say, "Oh, what's this about?" But then some people are really deep into it, or they've had it for a few years and just haven't started it, and so they're looking for help. So answering those questions is useful for me, but I generally don't screen people by their answers. It's not like you can fail the quiz. It's
right.
just kind of, to figure out who's in the group.
Yeah.
And then, once you're in the group, we have, it's gotten pretty lively. So, when I first started, it was kind of me reaching out. I don't feel like people felt very comfortable on their own, asking questions. They didn't know who was in there. They didn't know what the response would be. But I got to tell you, this community it's really amazing. Like how generous and how interested and really helpful everyone in the group is. Like we haven't had one bad interaction, which on social media is pretty impressive. But everybody gets in there and they ask their questions or they give their comments. They talk about their experiences. So that's another thing that people really find helpful is like hearing what other people's experiences while they're working on self-authoring. And so there's tons of people telling their stories about what's going on in their lives, how they've fixed things up, or what the process has been like for them. So all those things are things that we talk about. There's also, I think, in the comments you put a few resources that are available in the group too.
Yeah. Actually, I should pull that up.
Yes.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, no, those are they're just free resources that I've created for the program, for some of the programs in the self-authoring suite. Because one of the biggest problems people have is that it's really self-authoring is really good, but it was written by a team of academics, and it's very dry. It's what you would expect. It's kind of like the white website with the HTML boxes that you write your answers in, and it's not very interactive, and so it's really hard to muster up the energy since there's no game to it. There's no like gamification of it.
Right.
Yeah, so I made these free planners that basically give you a few schedules for like how to complete it. So if you want to finish in 2 weeks, here's what you have to do each day. If you want to finish in 3 weeks, here's what you have to do each day. And then also have a map of the whole process of doing future authoring or the process of doing past authoring. And,
right on.
Those have been pretty helpful to people. So and they're free. So
well, let's actually pull up the planners here so we can look at them together and everyone can see it, if you don't mind, and we can just talk about it for a second. For everyone that's joining us, we're talking about oops, I'm screening. Oh yeah, there we go. We're talking about the self-authoring collaboration group. Self-authoring, obviously, for many of us, we know that it's part of Dr. Peterson's work and some of his other collaborators. Go to selfauthoring.com and you'll see the writing exercises that are provided. Khemit Bailey here has been inspired to create a Facebook group where people are collaborating on their self-authoring process and supporting one another. It's a very powerful program. And right now we're going to take a look at the free past authoring planner. So I'm in the description. If you're looking at the screen, I'm scrolling through the description and I'm going to open up the free past authoring planner that Khemit has created. So good for you for being so proactive here. This is really great.
Yeah, thanks, man. I saw it as a need, and it definitely because part of it was selfish. It was hard for me getting through these programs also, so it was really useful to be able to just have something to look at that wasn't just the self-authoring website screen.
Yeah.
So I could actually figure out, oh, here we go.
So you fill out this information and then you get an email. Should I try it
yeah,
right now?
It actually takes you right to it after you fill that out. I host it through my website, so
just sorting myself.
Yeah, once you fill in your details, it sends you an email with like a backup in case you didn't get it, but it should also redirect you right to the PDF.
Fantastic. Let's try it out just so everyone can see how this works. You can contact us. That's fine. That sounds good. Cool.
Yeah,
Oh
there
my
you go.
goodness, you've put a lot of work into this.
Well, I have to admit that my girlfriend did design, help me a lot with the
It's
design.
always the girlfriend who's really
Yeah,
behind the
I, I
productivity.
I came up with the idea. I had the kernel of the idea, but to make it actually pretty with the colors and everything, that was not me.
Yeah.
There's
This
a different.
planner includes one, a thorough map and outline of the exercise, approximate completion times for each session, times made vary drastically by individual, tips related to the exercise, and for 2 gamified sample schedules for completion. Wow. Sweet.
Yeah. So this page kind of just visualizes like what the exercise looks like, because when you start it off, you have a map. There's an outline that's given to you on the self-authoring page, but
Mm.
it doesn't have there's nothing visual associated with it, so it's hard to kind of picture in your mind what it actually is, and you actually can't go forward in sections until you
Uh-huh.
fill it out. So this is kind of just showing you here's what the whole thing looks like. There's 7 epochs. You have up to 6 experiences for each one,
It's very
and
helpful for people who aren't verbal processors. There's a
yeah,
lot of people who are more visual that don't process things linearly, that need to see a map. This is very helpful.
totally. That's me to a T.
Okay, cool.
And so the future authoring planner is actually quite different from this one, because past authoring is, I'm not sure if you've done it, but it's a monster. It's really a huge exercise, and a lot
Right.
goes into it.
Well, I'll tell you real quick, I'm going to stop
Yeah.
sharing my screen. Everybody gets the point here. Go check it out for yourself. I highly recommend it. It looks amazing. But yeah, so I'm a 12-step recovery guy. So
Okay.
I got sober when I was uh, 16 or so. And I've been sober for 8.5 years. I had one like minor relapse shortly in, but I've been going steady. And part of 12-step programs is you do basically your whole inventory. It's called take a fearless moral inventory. You
Yeah.
look back on your past, you account for all your resentments, all your character flaws, everything. It's super intense. It's just like similar to this, except for it's structured a bit differently. So I've done that like 4 times,
Mhm.
intensively. And then I do what's called a 10th step and 11th step regularly, which is continuing to take moral inventory, admit when you're wrong, make it right, and then seek connection with your higher power to serve a purpose greater than yourself. So that to me, it's like part of the fabric of my life. So what I went straight to future authoring.
Yeah.
That's what I did. That's just me. Not everybody has that background. So for a lot of people, I think it's incredibly essential. If you still have memories that you haven't processed, if you have resentments that you're still holding on to, if you can't quite get past those old stories about who you were or who you feel like you still are, I think that that's just absolutely essential.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, first off, congratulations to you, man. That's amazing that you're able to do that. That's a tough challenge for a lot of people. So, and it's nice that you got there young.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I just fucked up hard enough to have to get there young,
yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes that's what's got to happen. I feel like to some degree that's the story. That's the hero's journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something goes bad enough that you have to fix it.
Yeah. 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 Sometimes hitting rock bottom early is a blessing because
Mhm.
it's only up from there.
Yeah, that's in entrepreneurship, that's what they always say. You want to fail fast and fail early, because the longer you wait, the more you're living in a fantasy world that is not going to
Right.
serve you in the long run.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the comments here for a second.
Okay.
Nothing too much here. We've got 10 people watching. We've got a couple likes here. Go ahead and hit that like button if you're enjoying this, everyone, if you feel like it. We've got Dust to Dust says, I have the self-authoring program, but haven't finished it yet. LOL. Well, it sounds like you need this Facebook collaboration group. So go
Yeah.
click it.
Yeah, no, that's that story. Trust me, you're not alone. Like that's the story I think that a lot of people share when they come to the group. It's like they bought self-authoring a year ago and they haven't even opened it, or they opened it and like they couldn't even look at it.
Right.
And Jordan Peterson talks about this sometimes, where it's like something that's so scary because it's judging you, like you bought it.
Right.
That's a big step right there, but then you got to complete it, and that takes a lot more work. It takes a lot more
Exactly.
consistency. So a
Yeah.
lot of times, people feel more comfortable kind of throwing money at the problem, but then once it comes time to actually do the work of it, it's
Yeah.
more intimidating. But it's not insurmountable. Like lots of people get through it, and sometimes it just takes like having that little tool, that little tweak
Right.
that can get you started. Because once you start, it's much easier to keep going and actually finish it.
Yeah, that's what I found too. It's like the momentum factor. You know, once you really get into the flow with the writing, and you're not like in resistance to it. You know, you're kind of in the zone.
Yeah.
That that things just start happening. We've got another comment here. Mo says, "I just popped onto the live stream. Very interested in going to request an invite. The girlfriend and I are both in the midst of starting and trying to figure out which one to start with. Do you have a
Mhm.
recommendation there?"
I think what you said earlier is the best answer for that. The website and basically tells you that there's no correct order, so you can start wherever you want, but it really does depend on what it is that you want to accomplish with it. So for future authoring, if you want to establish a vision of the future that's motivating and kind of propels you towards it,
Mm,
like if you're worried about taking next steps, then future authoring is great. If you have, like you said, memories that are still causing you pain, that are more than a year and a half old or so, and you want to deal with them or try to figure out what the story is behind them, then past authoring is great. And then the present authoring exercise is really good for everyone. I tend to think actually that past or future are the best places to start, but really, it's kind of up to you, depending on your needs.
right on. Yeah, and great that you Mo that you're gonna submit a request for to be a part of the group, the Facebook group, which is in the description. Everyone, again, uh, yours, Grosso. Sorry, I know I'm not pronouncing that right. I did the future authoring 2 weeks ago for the second time. Last year it took me 4 months. This time I finished it in less than a week. Wow, that's great progress.
Yeah.
And that's really cool that you're doing it again. Khemit, do you find value in revisiting these
Oh, yeah.
exercises?
It's huge. Yeah, huge value. I mean, for one, that experience is pretty common.
Mhm.
And in fact, I think that's kind of what the intention of the program is. There's a video you can find on YouTube that's about doing the program badly. Doing
Mhm.
something badly, where
Mhm.
Jordan Peterson was talking about one of the best strategies for getting through it is to just do a bad job, so you don't get caught up in trying to be a perfectionist.
Right.
And I think sometimes even doing the extreme version of doing it badly can be helpful. Just rush through
Yeah.
it to get through, because then you can always go back and change it. Because when you start the exercise, you have no idea where you're going to end up. Like by the end of it, you're almost a different person. You're creating a different story by the end than you were in the beginning. So
Yeah.
it's almost necessary to go back and like refine it and like make sure that what you have at the end makes sense from the standpoint of what's in the beginning. Because it is a plan. It's meant to give you a full plan. So yeah, that's great. But that's great that it took only a week the second time. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love what you're saying about doing a bad first draft or just sloppily working through it. That's one of my favorite teachings that Peterson talks about is stumbling forward clumsily
Yeah.
towards success. Like at least you're moving forward. I love
Right.
that. At
Yeah.
least you've taken it, even if you tripped forward and hit your face on the ground, like you still fell forward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You still moved closer to the finish line. So,
That's exactly right.
um, yeah. So I think letting go of the perfectionism or the fear of failure, those are two big things. Controlling, like letting go of control of having it to be perfect and just getting a little bit done is a
Yeah.
really powerful lesson. I have one story that relates to this. And are you familiar with primitive fire making methods?
I'm familiar that they exist. I could not make a fire myself.
Yeah, so one of my hobbies, personal passions is survival skills. I like wilderness stuff. I
That's
like,
really cool. You ever watch Survivor Man?
yeah,
That's that.
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh God, I love that show.
Yeah, so I've taken like these different survival training courses, and one of the things we learned how to do is these different, fire making methods where you don't
Mhm.
have a match or a lighter or anything. You have to use either bow drill, which is a one method, hand drill, trough fire. There's all these different methods, but I had gotten bow drill down early, which you can look up a picture of it on Google or whatever if you want to know what a bow drill fire is. But hand drill is really hard because you have one stock and then you have your hands and then you have the bottom board where you drive the stock down. It's like a mullen stock or a cattail stock, and you have to use this downward pressure, but your hands get super blistered and calloused. And it's actually really difficult to get that perfect form down with the speed,
Yeah.
and it takes time. And so I had always wanted to learn it, but I never could quite do it. I tried it every time, and my hands would just end up in blisters, and then I wouldn't do it anymore. So
Okay.
I told myself, I'm just going to do this 5 minutes a day. I did it 5 minutes a day for about 21 days. And sometimes I would be going for about 5 minutes and I'd get so into it, I'd do it a little longer. You know how that goes, right? You tell you, oh, I'm just going to write for 2 minutes. And then before you know it, you're actually kind of into it. But you're not giving yourself the pressure that you have to.
Yeah.
And I got it. Now I can do it. I can get that ember, and then you put the ember into the nest and you blow it into a flame, and then you have yourself a fire. And it just shows the power of incremental progress, one step at a time. Don't make this huge expectation. 5 minutes seems kind of like a weak proposition, but when you add it up over 21 days, it's a lot more than 5 minutes. So that's my little story about incremental growth.
Yeah, that's like the perfect analog to future authoring, I think, or to any of the self-authoring programs. I mean, there's actually a recommendation in the future authoring planner that that's in the link there. You can there's actually one of the schedules has doing it only 10 minutes a day, which, or it might even be 5. It's something really small, something where you'd think that it would take you forever to get through it. But it turns out that if you just do 10 minutes a day or 5 minutes a day, it still only takes you like a few weeks. So, you can have a few weeks of feeling like you're not getting anywhere, like dreading the fact that, opening the program and like wondering, if it's going to get itself done. Or you can just like spend that 5 minutes each day, like that time you spend worrying about it or feeling ashamed of not actually working on it. That time, if you spend that little chunk of time working on it, actually will take on a life of its own. And what you said earlier is really true. Also, I actually think it's a good idea for people to set like a ridiculously small goal. Like you can say 2 minutes a day, right? Open the program, write a word, anything, just one word. And the thing is, like, if by doing that, what happens is it kind of takes on a life of its own. Like most people won't just write a word; they'll write a few words. They'll do a little more. And it's important, though, I think, for people to find that balance, right? Because the temptation is either to, open it up, write for hours, and then be burned out and not go back to it and never finish. That happens also. Some people are ultra conscientious. They just like want to get after it, but then it's too much, and then it's just too daunting to even go back to it. But on the other hand, sometimes it's like too hard to even get any of it done. So it's like finding that little interplay, like what can I do? What can I do each day? This little bit, like you push yourself, but not too far out of your comfort zone. And by doing that, like you eventually get there.
Yeah.
Like you with your drill, with your hand drill.
Yeah, well, absolutely. That's brilliantly said. And I think it's a powerful lesson for everyone to integrate into their lives. It is counterintuitive because we do like this all or nothing mentality where we're balls to the walls or we're not doing anything at all. And I think people to understand that, to give themselves permission to do something, just to try it, just to make that mistake. And like Peterson says, you're going to fail. It's not a matter of if you fail. It's a matter of, how you refine that process so it becomes better and better. I've got two other things that come up, and then somebody has a question for you here, which I think will be good for you to answer.
Okay.
That's how I finished Maps of Meaning, the book. Not an easy read, at least not for me. I mean, it's a textbook and it's dense, and I found myself having to reread the same page quite regularly to really make sure I understood all the sentences because they are packed. I had to finish that incrementally. There was a part of me that wanted to like blast through it in 1 month. I think it took me, I think I got through a lot of it in 2 months, and then I had to take a break, and then I finished the rest a few months later, and I was reading maybe 10 to 30 minutes of it a day until I finished the book. And now it's, see if I can pull this up. Like now I look back at it and I've got all these notes in here, and it's like I'm proud. I'm proud. I mean, not in an arrogant sense, but just in a sense of I feel like I accomplished something by finishing that book. And the other thing I was going to say is I've got an ex-military captain buddy, and in the military, he was so used to everything having to be perfect. So when you plan for a mission, it's life or death. So like if one thing goes wrong, then you're screwed. So you don't mobilize unless you're really ready to mobilize. Now he wants to do a podcast, and he's bringing that same mentality into podcasting. So I've been working with him like, dude, this isn't the military. Like,
Yeah.
you are not going to die if you make a mistake on the podcast. And I was like, watch my videos. I make mistakes all the time and I'm still okay.
Yeah, you're like, I'm live out here. Anything could happen.
Exactly. So I'm trying to push him through that door. I've got a tremendous amount of respect for him. He's a firefighter, military guy, been through a ton, loves Carl Jung. We're in the same graduate school program together. But yeah, I'm trying to gently foster him towards, expressing himself through this format. So.
Yeah. Well, that's actually funny. I actually have a podcast myself, and I was in the
Oh,
military also.
really?
So yeah, it's called the Character Arc Podcast. It's part of my business, and we have episodes where we talk about a lot of the kind of stuff we're talking about right now. Maybe not necessarily future authoring related, but just about personal development and fiction. We talk a lot about fiction and stories and how that ties together.
Really?
Yeah, it's like my favorite subject. So we riff on that for a while, and but I remember when I was starting it, that mindset is one of the biggest barriers, right? You want to plan everything out, especially when you have that military background, because everything needs to have a set plan. You need a contingency plan in case things go wrong. You need a contingency plan in case those things go wrong. You can do that forever. You can plan that way forever, but at some point you got to jump.
So you understand that all too well.
I do, yeah.
I should point him in your direction for some inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually want to talk to you about that stuff, the stories that you like to talk about and your podcast and your military experience. But first, somebody has a question for you. Khemit, and this is from Yurjam Grausel again, and I'm very sorry mispronouncing your name very badly. Khemit, do you have any plans of expanding the Facebook group to include some other ideas or projects?
I've thought about this a bit. I'm a part of a few other Jordan Peterson related groups on Facebook, and they have much wider discussions. So I kind of feel like there are spaces for those things already. And I like the fact that the self-authoring collaboration group is specifically a place where people who are working on that program can come to discuss that. Because I think that's lacking. In some of the other groups, the subjects range so widely that
Right.
You may get drowned in the comments if you're talking about self-authoring. I've seen it happen. So one of the things we do talk about in the group, or that I've opened up to the group as a potential discussion thing to discuss, is the understand myself test, because I think that ties a lot, or can tie a lot, into people's experience with self-authoring, and it's another way of people understanding themselves and trying to figure out what is going on in their lives. So those things are really the two main subjects right now. I don't foresee him opening up to include anything much greater than that. But I guess it would depend on what. I mean, if there's a suggestion, I'd love to hear it. I'm always open to suggestions.
Yeah. And if anybody's just joining us, we're talking about the Future Authoring Collaboration group that Khemit here has created on Facebook. He's got a business of his own called the Character Arc. He wanted to help people get through the self-authoring program. I think I might have said future authoring, but the self-authoring program. And so there is a link in the description to that Facebook group. It's a community of people who are doing this together, who are trying to hold each other to some sort of accountability, but also just sharing, right? Just sharing what the experience is, just having a place to connect and relate to one another. That's another great thing about all of this stuff, the Jordan Peterson lightning rod that I've heard it called. That I like that term, that he's kind of a lightning rod where things happen around him. I think Mark said that when he came on, but anyways, I digress. I love that I get to meet people like you. You're an interesting guy. I'm fascinated. It's like, I love that. And so this Facebook group, this YouTube channel, there's all this opportunity for us to build important and impactful relationships that might last a lifetime.
Yeah, same to you, man. And I totally agree. And I've been through running the group. I've been in touch with a few other people. Some are who are in the Acton University MBA program. The Peterson Fellowship. So they have a perspective on that. There's the JBP Daily, paid membership group that's also another little small community that's kind of built up around design. And inside of the collaboration group, there's so many people. I mean, there are people from all over the world. That's one of the coolest things about the group. It's like, I actually asked I think it was the first week the group was open. I said, "Hey, I'm from New York. Like, where's everybody from in this group? Are we all Americans, or there's generally North American?"
Yeah.
And, the answer was definitely no. Like, people are from all over. We have people from Estonia, from Nepal, from New Zealand. Everywhere in the world there are people in the group, and it's cool because they're all there for the same thing. You know, they're all interested in the same ideas. They're all trying to sort themselves out. And being in a community like that is rare, I think, in person. You know, in our daily lives, a lot of us, you know, we're at school, we're at work. Not many people are in communities, physical communities, where they're focused on specifically on these kind of ideas. And so to have a place like that it's been great for me. You know, I started the group because I thought it would be helpful, but I'm just happy to be part of it too. I'm really happy to be in it.
That's fantastic. And I love the similarity between sorting myself out, our YouTube channel, what you're doing. I feel like we are really building a community that has these permeable boundaries where
Yeah.
people are now kind of in between. They've got an arm in different places. Like a lot of our listeners, it seems, were also subscribed to the Paul Vanderklay channel. And, you know, there's just these little synchronicities of groups building around this whole phenomena. And it's one of the things that I'm constantly touched by is the level of engagement in the comments
Mhm.
and the sincerity. There's just this real earnestness to it that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, I want to learn, I want to grow, and I want to contribute. Here's what I think,
Mhm.
or, you know, like, I liked what you said, but here's what I would change, or whatever. And it's this mutual respect. You know, so often on YouTube, podcasts, mixed media platforms, there's this kind of hierarchical thing, which
Mhm.
isn't bad, but it's almost like I get to talk and you get to listen, and
Right.
that's period. But we've kind of inverted that. We're having audience guests on our channel regularly, and we treat audience guests like they have something to say. Like
Yeah.
Peterson's rule: treat everyone like they might know something you don't know.
Right.
And so I'm constantly blown away by, oh my goodness, this person's doing this. They know this. I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So there is this kind of mutual respect community building that I really appreciate.
Yeah, no, I actually saw a few of those videos, like where you had some guests on, they were talking to you and your co-host, and I was like, wow, that's a really cool idea. And like, you know, they get to just have their moment to contribute because, like you said, everybody's got something to contribute, and
Yeah,
that's another thing that's going on in the group as well. Like I said, I learned about you and your channel from someone in the group, so really is this really cool community that's just like popping up.
exactly. Well, and we could now let's get into collaboration possibilities a little bit other than doing podcasts and
Mhm.
talking to each other in that format. Like I would always be willing to come talk to you on yours, or you can always come
Yeah,
here.
I love that.
Yeah, but other things we could do is, you know, we could do these audience submissions that we've been doing. We could talk about self-authoring. We could do specific sessions with people telling us what they've been doing on their self-authoring. We could share that with your Facebook. And there's all sorts of possibilities of how we
Yeah,
could support one another, that I think would be really cool. And now that I know that you're doing this, I'm just gonna, as often as I remember to, I'm just gonna push people in your direction. Be like, if you need
right.
support with the self-authoring process, then go over to that Facebook page that's in the description that Khemit created. It's called the Self-Authoring Collaboration Group. And then people have there's this infrastructure of support building,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they can come to Sorting Myself Out to watch some content. Like,
right.
what are people saying? What's going on? Then they can go interact with the collaboration group. I just think, you know, it's cool. It's a cool thing that's building.
Yeah, no, it's like a little ecosystem, you know, and
Yeah.
I say little, but it's not so little. I mean, you've got a lot of followers, and you know, our group is just. When I started the group, I figured there'd be, you know, a couple people would join, maybe we'd have some small conversations.
Right.
I'm not expected to jump up to 500 in a couple weeks, so, and I know it's going to keep growing that way. So I spread
Yeah.
it around as much as I can. You know, I comment whenever Jordan Peterson posts about future authoring because he'll post discounts or something. I'll always, you know, in the comments let people know that we have a group so they can kind of come join us. And yeah, it's great to have more people in. So anyone you can send our way is helpful to us, you know, because
Yeah.
as the community expands, like we get better, we get smarter because it's just more people more resources to draw from.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll just keep sending people your way as often as possible.
And same for you. You know, we got you know, not as many. You've got a lot of people already in your orbit, but a lot of them maybe have not heard about your work in our group. And so this video I'll definitely be sharing with them once we're done. And in the future, hopefully we can kind of get everyone on the same page. It'd be lovely to have everybody, you know, knowing about everyone else who's in this space working towards the same ends.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Let's just keep communicating, see what unfolds. We got a couple comments here.
Yeah.
Dust to Dust says, takes a lot of humility to improve or contribute to anything, which is counterintuitive. I think I know what you mean by that. Oh yeah, because we were talking about the counterintuitive earlier. Yeah, absolutely. Great point. Yeah, and Yurzum says, Phil and Khemit, when did you do the self-authoring? Could you elaborate on how it was useful to you guys? And I don't know who you're talking to, Phil. Phil's realm was in the comment section earlier. That's my brother, Colton. I'm Ryan, but Phil, I don't know if you meant to say Phil or if you're talking to me. So you did address when you did the self-authoring, didn't you?
Yeah, a little bit. I can talk about, maybe I'll talk about future authoring, since that's pretty fresh in my mind and is maybe the most useful for people to hear about. I did future authoring at a time when I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to go in, like many people. And so I'd never done a 12-step program like you, but I had participated in, over the course of in my early 20s and my late teens, I had some really dark times. And so I realized I needed to figure something out, or things weren't going to go very well for me. And so I started doing a lot of work and participating in a lot of programs, things that were available at the time, and just reading a lot about these kind of ideas.
Was that before or after the military?
This was before and during the military, before and during, and to some degree after. So I got out of the military in 2008. But yeah, so when I was thinking about doing future authoring, though, my past was something I had done a lot of work on, and that doesn't mean that it's exhausted. It's obviously inexhaustible to try to figure out what your story actually is, and you don't know what it is until the end, actually. But there is work that I had done on that, and so I was more interested in figuring out, what are my next steps. I had left my job. I was working in the Bay Area in the tech industry, and I left my job there because I just was not feeling satisfaction. Like I was feeling like there was something missing. And I think this is another common thing people are familiar with, especially these days. There's like an existential crisis that's popping up around, success, and what does it actually mean, and what does it mean to actually be succeeding in the realms of life that you want to be succeeding in. And so, as I was sorting through those problems, I thought to myself, it'd be a good idea to try out a program that's developed by someone who I respect greatly, and maybe I can get some answers. And so I did future authoring, and after I was done with it, it was, just the process of doing it. This was the cool part about it. And a lot of people in the group have said this too. Just the process of working on it was enlightening. Even before I got to the end, I started having these epiphanies, like just by writing about some of my goals or some of the things that were visions for the future that I had in my mind. I started realizing things that I hadn't thought about before. And so by the end, I really felt like I had a coherent, like clear idea of a direction that I wanted to go in, of something that I wanted to do, with my own life, but also the ways I wanted to contribute to the world. And so actually, after I finished that, it was a while after, but I started the collaboration group. That was one of the things that came out of it. But I definitely felt like it was one of those experiences that gave me a lot of perspective. And those, I think, are rare when you're working a job, because you don't have that much time to sit back and contemplate. And same when you're at school. And so it's like a step away from your actual life. So you can start thinking about what it is you're actually doing instead of just doing things. So that was kind of my experience. There were some really great things that came out of it. Some things in my relationship that got cleaned up a little bit, got cleared up for me. And yeah, all positive benefits.
When you were speaking, I was reminded of Peterson one time said something about speaking yourself forward into being. Oh man, I loved that. I was like, oh my goodness. Speaking like the logos, speaking itself forward into being is magical. And it's true though. It's creating an intention. It's letting that energy manifest itself. That's why, in the Old Testament, the spoken word is so emphasized in the creation of all things. And I don't know much about that other than that, but that's one thing I could say. And but this process of creating an intention and speaking it and writing it, and it makes it a place within your psyche. So even if like there's words, there's images, there's like you're building something.
Mhm.
And even though it's not physical yet, that process is going to program your brain to move towards that goal.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go on a little side tangent here about the part of the brain called the reticular activating system. It's in your brainstem, and it programs what you see and what you don't see. So, and you see things in accordance to their relevance. So, is it going to help me? Is it going to hurt me? So, and you've read Maps of Meaning, so you're aware of that whole map. But if you're programmed to a certain goal that isn't necessarily aiming high, you're only going to see things which are relevant to that particular goal. And sometimes our brains are even programmed towards an image of negative self, a self image of being lower than we are, right? Shame,
Yeah.
or I'm no good. A lot of us have that image of ourselves, self doubt. And so our lives are going to be filtered in accordance to that orientation.
Yeah.
But if we create something beautiful, this possibility, it doesn't matter if like the exact way we see it happens, but the point is that our whole orientation towards being, that's why it's speaking yourself forward into being, is going to be different. We're going to experience life in a totally different way. And that, another quote from Peterson: reality is not made of matter, it's made of what matters. What's relevant to you?
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, what's your, I guess he would call it like your moral orientation. What are the choices that you've made in your life about what you believe or what's important to you? Those are all important things. So I think that this program is definitely a defense against nihilism. It's a defense against meaninglessness, and it's creating this abundant, garden in your life of self-expression and potential.
Yeah.
So that was my side tangent.
No, that's a perfectly relevant side tangent. I mean, you're talking about like a motivational frame, right? When you set up a motivational frame, then everything you see is based on the directions that frame points in, right? Either towards or away from. And so what future authoring really does is like help you come up with a frame that's based on your values, right? And that's the funny thing to do, because a lot of people don't think about values. You don't think about what your values are, but it's really, that's because that's like a high-minded term, but it's the same as saying what you value, and we all value things. It's inescapable. And so knowing concretely and specifically what it is you value, and then figuring out exactly what steps you need to take to move towards it, is almost the same as doing that, because you have to play it out. You have to actually like come up with that frame. You have to act it out in your mind, and then you have to embody it if you actually want to move toward it, to progress toward it. And I think those two things are tied up inextricably. So you kind of do one by doing the other. So that's why future authoring really gets you over the hump, let's say, towards progress.
Absolutely. We've got a comment here from MO. We should all say a prayer today for Dr. Peterson and his wife, Tammy. She is scheduled to have a second surgery today, which was urgent enough that he had to cancel some events. Absolutely. Yeah. If you are somebody who believes in prayer and the power of prayer, please do that. And if not, just, hold Peterson in your heart for that and obviously his wife, more importantly, because she's the one having surgery. So
for sure. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I'm really curious about you have this picture of Spider-Man on your character art page. I'm curious about, I know that we're running short on time. I don't know if you need to go, but if you don't mind telling me a little about your passion for stories, comics, things like that.
Sure. Well, I actually was, maybe another time we'll get to talk to Mercury. Is your partner's name, right? Your co-host?
Yeah.
Because I was in one of the other videos you guys had. He was talking about Alan Moore, and I heard him mentioning a few things that kind of triggered my nerd gene. I was like, wait, what's that over there?
He'd love to speak with you.
Yeah. So I've been a huge comic fan my entire life, my entire, not even my adult life, my whole life. And
wow.
Honestly, I've just been a fiction aficionado ever since I could remember. And I've been also, all genres. So comic books, movies, anime and manga. I was, being into the Japanese stuff for a while too. And all those things were very important to me growing up, and they actually still are. And I always chafed at the idea that people don't think that there's something more to fiction, right? That there's something that's valuable there, that people are drawn to those things for a real reason, other than just entertainment. And I think, well, and Peterson talks about this all the time, and he's articulated it better than, well, it's a Jungian idea about archetypes and the foundation of stories, but the way he's kind of brought it to the public consciousness is one of my favorite things about his work, because I think there really is an importance to stories, to fiction, and it's not just their entertainment value. They actually are revealing things about us as we interact with them, because I don't think we just watch stories. We interact with them. They're having an effect on us, and then the effect they have on us changes our frame, and that changes how we view how the story continues.
Mm-hmm.
So that all ties into my business, the character arc, because basically it's a program that's meant to help people take their next step. So I feel like self-authoring is really about figuring out where you want to go. It's about figuring out where you've been, what the state of being you're in right now is, and where you want to go. And my course is actually somewhat similar to that, but it's more on the back end, which is to say, where you go, how do you do that? Because once you have a plan, you have to enact the plan. And I think the only way that people do that is by getting in touch with what inspires them, because inspiration is motivation. I mean, it's basically just another word for the same thing. And so my project actually uses fiction and the resonance that people feel with fiction to activate that inspiration, to like figure out exactly what it is that's underlying their responses to fiction, and then use that as motivational force to actually take steps in their lives. So I have a course that does that. And so
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So that's,
we actually we just recorded, I haven't posted it yet, but we did an analysis of The Killing Joke.
Oh, cool.
With an audience member. He was really working on letting go of some resentments in his life, and he saw kind of a Cain and Abel theme in the Batman and Joker.
For sure.
And he wanted to, the Hostile Brothers, exactly. And he wanted to share that. Also, my brother Colton and I we'll do some live streams every so often called the Hostile Brothers. And I can't get him to stream with me though. I mean, every time we talk about it, he just bails on me.
Okay.
So
maybe one day.
He just hasn't sorted himself out yet. I'm just kidding.
He's watching right now.
He's a big Peterson fan, and
okay.
He's wonderful. He's a
great baby guy. Get him on for like a minute.
Yeah. Well, I think we should leave it here. There's plenty of information for everyone in the description. I think next time maybe we could go dive deeper into some of the stories. I'd love to talk about some of the comics that you're interested in and how that relates to just the process of human growth. And you're an awesome guy. This has been a delight.
Hey, you too, man. Thank you very much. And that's my favorite thing to do. Literally, I've based my business around it, my life to some degree, along with some of these grander ideas. So thanks for having me. Really.
Yeah, honestly, I really enjoyed it. Again, everyone, go check out the Self-Authoring collaboration group in the description, as well as there's some other resources in there. And what else? I think there's, oh yeah, hey, Eric Gabor, I haven't seen you in a while, but it's really good to see you. I was thinking, I think about my commenters. It's kind of, maybe it's a little bit I'm too connected sometimes, but I really I build these personal relationships with the listeners. And I know as we grow, it's going to be harder and harder to do that. But I was thinking about you, Eric, and I was like, man, I haven't seen him comment in a while. I wonder how he's doing. It's kind of cool though. It's like, even though I don't know these people, I feel them as a part of my psyche in my life somehow, every so often.
Well, that's really cool. It's really cool you do that. You're an awesome guy too, right? And that's an expression of it, like be paying attention to the little things. Like you said, everybody's got something to contribute. They're not just nameless listeners, nameless audience members. The people in my collaboration group aren't just, random dots and, bits on the internet. They're actually people out there. And I think that it's cool that you stay in touch with them that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Khemit, you're the best. I love talking to you. And let's just email back and forth about other possibilities. And I'm just going to exit the call and the broadcast will end. And you're welcome to share this on Facebook if you want to. And I'm an open book anytime you want to chat.
All right, man. Sounds good. Thanks again.
All right. Yeah, no problem. See ya.
All right.